What's up? This is a deck tech on a powerful version of Kruphix God of Horizons. It's a big mana mid to late game stompy that wins through combat damage and even at instant speed.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit and the coffee ain't hit.
So we're looking at bread. For me, this is bombs, removal, enchantments, artifacts, and draw. This is what I like to focus on whenever I'm building my decks, or at least showcasing them. So it makes it like a nice little sales pitch, you know? So here, starting out with the commander, of course. The whole theme of this deck, like a rule zero, like the pre-game conversation, like you're just going to make really big mana with this commander because he stores up any mana that you would normally lose in between phases. He just piles it all up. The catch is it goes colorless. But that's fine in this deck because we're going to be casting a bunch of big X casting spells. Pat tilt towards Hydras, but it's not solely Hydras in here. And some of the X spells that, of course, are our wing cons, which we'll get into later. And so he starts off as an enchantment, so that's nice. That's kind of like evasion. You don't have to worry about like getting picked up by like a 2-drop destroy target creature. You know, instead you get picked up by a 2-drop destroy target enchantment. Psych, because he's indestructible. So that's nice too. By the time he becomes a creature, you probably could end up swinging with them because there is like a sub 1/1 counter theme within this brew of Kruphix. Commander aside, and drop him off the table here. We got bombs is where we will start first. So starting on bombs, let's grab this little pile of 10. We got big bombs and little bombs. So starting with the little bombs, we have a Scute Swarm here. Let's spread this out. Scute Swarm is good because you could get it out as early as turn 2, and it just puts a lot of pressure onto your opponents. Scute Swarm is a landfall. It creates a 1/1 insect. If you have 6 or more lands, it creates a copy of itself. And so that's nice because then it gets like pretty exponential. So if you have landfall, you create tokens now. If you get landfall and you have 3 of these bad boys out, you would create 3 more tokens of them. Then you'd have 6 of them out. And then once you have 6 of them out, see it gets out of hand pretty quickly. The great thing about having smaller bombs in a deck is that like this Mana Gorge or Hydra as well, is that it just draws, I call it removal bait, draws removal from the enemy or your opponents. So as long as they're using their removal on something like, it's like really just a 3 CMC, which isn't bad in a green deck. As long as they're using their removal on that leaves you space to slide in your bigger threats and bombs. Like we'll start with Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. He's a 6/6 for 6 trample haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of those counters on that permanent or player instead. So there is a sub 1/1 counter theme gonna be happening here, especially with the Hydras that enter with an amount of 1/1 counters. So this just doubles that up, speeds you along to victory, and it's just a really big scary thing that if it's not handled swiftly by your opponent, you will overwhelm them with this. It's damn near doubling season almost. And it does the adverse thing to the opponent. So if somebody else is running something that cares about counters, this puts half those amount of those counters on that permanent player instead, rounded down, which could be pretty gross. Next is Coma, the Cosmos Serpent. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, so not just your own, at the beginning of everybody's upkeep, you create a 3/3. So in a multiplayer format, this really shines. You can then furthermore sacrifice these 3/3s at instant speed to tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated, so you can stop people from abusing certain creature effects or even an artifact or whatnot. Keep in mind they could just tap it in response. Or you could sacrifice a serpent and make this guy indestructible, which you will want to be protecting him, obviously. So they would have to exile him. assuming you didn't waste your serpent to protect him. You want to like generally keep one serpent alive. sacrificable. Next is AC, the Tyrant of Gyre Strait. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and landfall, draw a card, which is always good. Like, they fuel into each other. Your next bomb is Consecrated Sphinx. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. That's always good. That gets out of hand very fast. Next is your Defiler Vigor, which is a really great card. As an additional cost to cast any green permanent spells, you can pay 2 life. So it could speed you along, because life is just a resource, at least that's how I see it. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, each creature you control gets a 1/1 counter. So if you have Vorinclex and Defiler out, whenever you cast a green permanent spell, each creature gets 2 1/1 counters. So pretty quickly, all the 1/1 Skewed Swarm can get pretty large, and it could overwhelm your opponents, and you can just win the game off of that value right there. No further tricks or shenanigans needed. Tendershoot Dryad, another kind of like Coma at the beginning of the upkeeps. You're going to create a Sapperling token, a 1/1. By the time this comes out, and if not shortly after, you will have the City's Blessing, so you're actually creating 3/3s. Again, Defiler, make them much larger, whichever. Sphinx of the Second Sun, this card is really fun to play with. How it works is after combat, you get an additional beginning phase, and what that means is untap, upkeep, draw. So you'll untap everything, you'll get an additional upkeep, and then you get to draw. So like upkeep phase, so that means Coma likes that, Tendershoot Dryad likes that. You have other things that care about that. You untap, so like a Kruphix, so you can just tap everything to pile up your mana, and then untap it and then draw again. Primordial Hydra is another really great one. This thing doesn't even have to come out large. You can just throw it out for like 4, X being 2, and it will get out of hand pretty quickly. It can also be so it comes in with X 1/1 counters, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you double the 1/1 counters on it, and as long as it has 10 or more 1/1 counters, it gives itself trample. This gets out of hand so quick, especially with Sphinx of Second Sun, because that's an additional upkeep. So like, let's say like you play it for 2. Let's just say we had some of these pieces out already. You play Hydra for 2, and then it comes in as a 4. And during your upkeep, if you had Sphinx out, then it would get doubled to, on the same turn, it would get doubled to 4 more, which would get doubled again by Vorinclex. So it'd be 8 more instead of 4. So it would come in, it'd be a 12/12 by the end of your turn if you just played it for 2. And you had these 3 out, or something close to that. Like, it just gets out of hand. It gets out of hand really quick. If they don't respond to either just this by itself or any combination of these, you will end up winning the game. Even these little ones like the Menagorger Hydra and these Skewed Swarms. I call them little, but do not underestimate them. These are your powerhouse cards. Like, these are the cards that if you're not careful when you play them, depending on the board state, you become the threat and you'll get targeted. So that's it for our bombs. Next, we're going to move into our 12 removals in the deck. Some of these cards really it works well as draw and removal or something like that. So like, you'll see the same card throughout here. So starting off is a Planeswalker, a Fairy, our Temporal Mage. Let's spread this and get a look at these. So Teferi, whenever you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on him. This gets out of hand so quick in this deck. Like, you can even play him and just hold off on using one of his loyalty effects, and in the same turn you can ult him. This can get out of hand pretty quickly, because it's whenever you draw, he gets a loyalty. And so you will actually end up using to win. It's rude, but I mean, it's like, hey, after this, I mean, we scoop it in his game and we start again. So, -12, target opponent chooses a permanent they control, return it to their hand, and then they shuffle each non-land permanent they control into their library. So this just shuffles their entire board that's not all their non-lands into their library. So like, it's a board wipe. They get to keep one thing. They get one permanent, They get to choose one permanent and it goes to their hand. Everything else gets shuffled into their library. Not their lands, but, you know, everything else. So it's a board wipe. I really do like the -2. I was debating putting the creature in here for that, but then I was like, wait a second. This walker makes them. His -2 creates a 2/2 spirit token that whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on it. We draw a lot of cards in this deck. You will draw a lot. So that can also get out of hand. Big beat stick. Or you can just use him to draw a card, but he's in this here for removal slot. And so not just creature removal. That's like an entire board wipe. As far as board wipe in here, I don't think we do have another board wipe other than Curse of Swine. It's a pseudo board wipe. You know, we have a crap ton of mana, but it depends on what you're considering board wipe, because this is just creatures. So exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller gets a 2/2. So you can like wipe the board this way of pesky creatures with good abilities, or very strong creatures, or even indestructible creatures. You can exile them. Removal, further Force of Vigor. This is great for artifacts and enchantments, because that seems to be the cards that really tilt the flow of the game. That's a removal for 2 of them at instant speed. Got to love instant speed. That is living the best life. Voracious Hydra. Another huge Hydra, potentially. When it comes in, you can make it even larger, or you can make it fight something. So this could serve as a potential removal. Depends on how you see it. At instant speed, again, we have Aetherize. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. This is like, you swing out. This card is nice. I like to include these because you can swing out at somebody and they'll think that you're weak, or you can like pretend like, oh, I was no vision in on you, I wanted to swing over here to get this or that, and then they think they catch you with your britches down, and then you're like, ha, you've activated my trap card, and you flip over that Aetherize, and they're like, uh-oh, and you bounce their big old board back in their hand. Lithoform Engine is in here because it copies anything. This card is really good. It copies anything from triggered effects. Heck, I'm pretty sure you could even use it to copy Teferi's ultimate, and then you could wipe two players at the same time. You can, because we have a lot of mana, so like the mana is not the issue here. So you could pay 4 copy any permanent, any of the bombs, any of these, or pay 3 copy an instant of sorcery. So any of these other instant of sorcery removals, you can double up on with this Lithoform Engine. So we have Planeswalker removal, creature removal. Here's another creature removal, Ulvenwald Tracker. It makes a creature you control fight something, so that could potentially be removal. You can make a huge creature fight a small one, or another huge one, whichever. Player removal. We do have player removal right here. Drown in Dreams is another X casting spell. If you control your commander, you get both of these effects. Target player draws X cards, and or target player mills twice X cards. So like in the right situation, assuming they don't have like stuff that shuffles their graveyard back into their library, in the right situation, this is one card takes out 2 opponents. This is pretty nasty. You swing like your big board at one opponent, and then he's like, oh, I take the damage, or before he takes the damage at instant speed, you wipe out your other 2 opponents. You make one draw himself out, the other mill himself out. And if it's somebody that's gone through a lot of their deck, you could probably get away with this without having like buku amount of mana. Like, depends on what you consider buku. It's like for me, like if I cast something under 20, it's like not buku. But so like with that, we have Fierce Guardianship. I consider this removal because you never know what kind of threat it could be out. They could be pulling out like an artifact, an enchantment, or but a lot of times I end up using this to protect my win con, to tell the truth. Mana Drain along the same line, same thing with Void Slime. Isochron Scepter is here because Isochron Scepter can copy any 2-drop spells, so you can copy your Mana Drain in this removal slot. It's mainly for your drawing, and there is a combo in here. I really like Void Slime because it lets you counter an activated or triggered ability. So Void Slime can actually counter a Planeswalker. So say mirror matchup, somebody it's their Teferi, I can say, okay, well, I love this card for its flavor text. So like, they go to activate their Planeswalker ultimate, you can counter that. This is what this card does. They go to cast a spell, you can counter that. There's a triggered ability of something that happens at the upkeep that they win the game. You can counter that. So Void Slime's good because it doesn't just counter spells, it counters creature abilities. It can, at least. Mana Drain is a great counter spell. Only 2 mana, you counter something, and then you get an amount of colorless mana equal to its CMC, so that's great. You counter somebody's win con or something huge and scary that they have, and then you get like a lot of mana on your next turn. That's a win. And so that's it for our removals. And so we're gonna go from our removals over to our lovely enchantments. We have 9 enchantments in this brew. Let's get in position. Okay, so starting off with how many enchantments we have for drawing. I suppose. Let's just start, right? We have 3 enchantments for drawing. We have Sylvan Library, Kruphix Uprising, and Rhystic Study here. Okay, so Sylvan Library, at the beginning of your draw step, we get to draw 2 additional cards. The catch is we got to put 2 of them back, unless we want to pay 4 life per one of those we wish to keep. So like generally you won't really do this unless you're going for broke, you're going for the win, you're about to get it or whatever. Like most times this is just a way to manipulate the top 3 of your deck, which is a powerful effect. And it does count as drawing, so if you have things like that to ferry out and other said effects that care about you drawing, this will trigger. Kruphix Uprising, so whenever ETBs, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you get to draw a card, plus all your creatures have trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater ETBs, you draw a card. Under your control, you draw a card. So it's not cast, it's just whenever it enters under your control, which is important because Lithoform Engine, you can copy things. There are things that care about just ETB as opposed to casting in this deck. So Rhystic Study, it's a staple, it's in here. Hello. Whenever opponent casts a spell, you get to draw a card unless they pay 1 taxing. Ley Line of Anticipation. Playing at instant speed is the best kind of Magic, in my opinion. This card lets you do that. If it's in your starting hand, you get to start with it on the battlefield. That's great. More, please. We have Cryptolith right here, which lets our creatures tap for 1 mana of any color. So that's great. It turns our creatures into mana dorks. So if we have a bunch of those insects out from Scoot Swarm, that works. Unbound Flourishing is a great card because we care about we have a lot of X spells in our deck. This either copies or doubles them. If it's a permanent, it doubles the X. If it's instant or sorcery, it copies the spell. So you can cast 2 of them, which is a very powerful effect. And it's only 3 mana to get onto the field. Like, you see how scary that looks? Like, that's... like, just imagine seeing that in real life. That's what your opponents feel a lot of times when they see it. This is like a weaker... It feels and plays like a doubling season right here. Doubling season, if effect would create 1 or more tokens, creates twice that many. If effect would place 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it places twice that many. Doubling season. It doubles them up. It's great. This is a great card. Gets out of hand. When you play this is removal bait, in my opinion. When I play this card, I play it because I want you to focus on removing this enchantment instead of focusing on what else I've got in my hand that I'm trying to be sneaky with. Wilderness Reclamation. Another great enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands. This is like an acceptable version of Seaborn Muse. Like, I feel like people are much more accepting over when I play a Wilderness Reclamation but they're like, good card, as opposed to like if I play a Seaborn Muse and they're like, it's got to go. You know what I'm saying? Asceticism, great card, protects all your creatures, gives them hexproof, and you can pay 2 to regenerate a creature. Regenerate means it keeps it from dying. I think it's the next time it would die, you just tap it instead, which is great. For 2 mana, that's nothing. That's great. And plus, the more important thing is that it protects your creatures, because there's a lot of removal out there, and a lot of it targets, but not all of it. A lot of it targets. And that's it for our lovely enchantments. Now we're going to move on to our artifactos, which we have 10 of. 10 artifacts. And a lot of these, honestly, are probably going to be ramp. Okay, so artifacts, spreading them out. Let's look for our rampy artifacts first, because that's where the money is. Isochron Scepter. This is also a doubler. That's mana. It's mana. Boom. So 7 out of 10 of our artifacts deal with ramping. So, or mana rocks, which I consider ramping. We actually have a ramp package that we'll get to later. So artifacts, we're looking at, of course, a Soul Ring, another 1-drop. Mana Vault for 3 mana. Victory Chimes is a great. Mana Vault taps for 3 if you don't know what Mana Vault does. This is an artifact that costs 1 mana. It gives you 3 mana, but it doesn't untap on its own. You have to pay 4 mana to untap it. And if you get caught during your upkeep with it tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. It's like not so bad as a mana crit, but paying for it to untap is kind of like this is really like you play it and you save it for a bursty turn. That's how you play Mana Vault. In our situation, we have so much mana and other ways of untapping Mana Vault, so like it's not really a setback for us. That's all right. That's acceptable. Next is Victory Chimes. I really like this one, especially in Kruphix, because it untaps during each other player's untap step, so that it untaps on everybody's untap step. A player of your choice, so you can even do politics with this. You can like, hey man, I'll help you get rid of this player over there. They're a big threat. Like, you need 1 more mana, hook it up. Don't swing this way. Look at that guy. You know, or like, hey, or whatever. I've noticed with this deck, you don't really find yourself in that way because you generally end up being a threat. But you know, it is there. So, and it untaps on everybody's untap step. So with Kruphix, again, he floats our mana. So we just float all of our mana here. So this is 3 colorless mana, basically, because it untaps on everybody's turn. Be like, oh, it's your turn. I'll tap it for 1 mana. Okay, it's your turn. It untaps. I'll tap it for 1 mana. And then every time, because of our commander, Kruphix, we just keep that mana. One thing that I've noticed with Kruphix is I really like to keep some form of counting my extra mana. Like, you're on tap step, tap that for 1 mana, it untaps. Tap that for 1 mana, it untaps. You can use a die or whatever, it works. Next is the Allspark, or Doubling Cube, sorry. Doubling Cube's great. We end up with a lot of manas piled up. You pay 3 mana and you double it. This just gets out of hand. It can get out of hand. It's kind of a win more-esque card, not really. Arcane Signet, another mana rock, 2 for 1. We got the Great Hinge in here. It taps for 2 green mana and you gain 2 life. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets a 1/1 counter and you draw a card. Good card. It costs 9 mana, that's the CMC of it, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And so a lot of times you'll end up dropping this for just 2 mana. Chromatic Orrery. This is another great card that I'm just infatuated with. So for 7 mana, you can spend manas out where any color. So that's great. You don't have to worry about matching that up anymore. It itself taps for 5 mana. You know, if you have something like a Nyx Bloom Ancient out, like this taps for 15 mana. It's fun. 1 card, 15 mana. It's good. That's good magic, right? All right, now your non-ramping artifacts here, the Ozolith. This is great because we're going to have that sub 1/1 counter theme going on. So anytime a creature leaves the battlefield from dying or board wipe or whatever it be, Ozolith will pick up those counters. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can move those counters onto any other creature. That's great, right? Lithoform Engine, this is great. It copies anything. Literally, you can copy anything. It can copy an instant sorcery, can copy a permanent, or it can copy an ability. Like, it's great. Okay, so Isochron Scepter, this is great too. This is a combo piece in this deck, but it doesn't have to just be a combo piece. When it comes into play, you remove an instant with CMC 2 or less from your hand from the game, so the imprint. So you exile it underneath this card, and then you pay 2, and then you copy the imprinted instant, and you get to play it for free. So the way this works, like let's say this is the more common, nastier way of using it. You play Isochron Scepter, you exile a counter spell, a mana drain. Let's do that one. You imprint mana drain because it's an instant for 2. And so now at any time, just pay 2, recast mana drain, and that's pretty good. Magic. Pretty good magic. No, it's great. It's great. So now we pile all these in. I'm done with our artifacts. Let's get on to our lovely draw spells, because we have 23 of these. That's the reason this deck, I feel, flows so great, because we have 23 draw spells. That is a lot. That is a lot. Some of these we've seen already. These are doubled up cards, as far as like for example, Teferi. But that is okay. So let's start with looking at our creature draw. So we have Consecrated Sphinx again. Whenever we draw a card, whenever opponent draws a card, we get to draw 2 cards. We have AC. We have Gadwick, the Wizened. He's 3 plus X. He enters the battlefield, you draw X, and whenever you cast a blue spell, tap a non-land permanent opponent controls. This card could potentially tap down an opponent's defenses or blocking creatures, so you can swing in for the game or for free damage, whichever. Hydroid Crassus is a great one. When you cast this spell, you gain half X and draw half X. But you round down each time. He enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on him. He's a Flample, flying trample. 2 and an X. Not bad at all. That card can come in clutch. We have another landfall, draw a card, but this time gain a life as well, and it costs 2 less. Asai and Tatiova. Prime Speaker Zagana is a great one. Whenever she enters the battlefield, she gets X 1/1 counters, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You got to be careful with her, because if you place her at the wrong time, you can deck yourself out in this deck. And when she enters the battlefield, you draw cards equal to her power. So like you have a decent size Hydra, or like, cause you know, like if you have a Primordial Hydra and is really huge, you play her, you're gonna lose. But if you have one that's only like, let's say like a 13/13, like that's not bad at all. Like you play this, she comes in as a 14/14, draw 2 hands. Like that's great. Draw 14 cards. Like that's great. Sphinx of the Second Sun. We've seen him. A second upkeep or untap upkeep draw. Like great card, great creature. Another one, Overbeing of Myth. 5 CMC. Her power toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. You get to draw an additional card during your draw step. Good card. Out of the creatures, now we're into our instants. Our instant card draw. Drown in Dreams. This, again, most times will be used as player removal. But there are times you can use it for yourself, and you can pick it up to draw for yourself. Not player remove. And you can pick it back up using your Finale of Revelation later on in the game. So I wouldn't be afraid to use your Drown in Dreams, but just know most times, at least for myself, I have used this as player removal, not actually drawing. Joint Exploration. This is an amazing card in Simic. Oh my goodness. For 2 mana, instant speed, scry 2, draw 1. If you paid the extra 1, you get to place a land from your hand on the battlefield at instant speed. So that's at the end of somebody's turn. That's great. Another instant speed is Pull from Tomorrow. Draw X, then discard a card. This could, if you have enough mana, you pour it all into this to get to dig for your win con. That's how this deck works. And if you don't hit your win con, chances are you're going to hit another one of these 23 draw spells to dig even deeper, or you're going to hit one of the bombs that's going to slowly win you the game while you're digging. That's why I was saying I have some enchantments and other things that you just cast in this deck just to keep your opponent off your game while you're digging for the win. Of course, we have Rhystic Study, Unbound Flourishing. So this can double up any of our X casts, including our Hydroid Crassus, which is the creature that lets us draw. Unbound Flourishing, which is the enchantment from earlier. It can double those, so that's in our draw slot as well. Sylvan Library again. Garruk's Uprising again. Lithoform Engine again, because it can copy anything. See, we have recursion here. This is what makes decks powerful. We have, or consistent, I should say. Great Hinge again, and Chromatic Orrery. Now this Finale Revelation, this is a great card because it says you draw X. If X is 10 or more, instead you shuffle your graveyard into your library, and then you draw X, and then you untap 5 lands. And then you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Which our command already gives us that, but that's like one of the deck's potential weaknesses, so that's always nice to have a second on that. And then you exile this card. So this card can just draw you probably like 3 to 6 cards, or you can hold it for like almost like a win con. It's not necessarily a win because it won't flat out win you the game, but you'll get so much value off of this, you'll end up running away with the game. So like, especially if you do play it for 10s, which is a total of 12 mana, which is totally possible in our deck. It sounds like a huge amount, but it's totally doable in this deck. Because again, like this deck has so much ramp. The colors are powerful. It's great. It's built well. This is a great build. Roadside Reliquary. I've been falling in love with this card. This card has been doing nothing but performing, specifically in this deck. So pay 2, sacrifice it. This is a land, by the way, and you get to draw a card if you control an artifact. And then you get to draw a card if you control an enchantment. So you can draw 2 cards off of this. This is great. This is great. This is a land that lets you draw 2 cards. You pay 2 mana, draw 2 cards. This is great. And then all I have to do is sacrifice it. There's not a lot of land recursion from graveyard in this deck, but in fact, I don't really think there's any outside of Finale of Revelation. But I mean, you won't regret dropping 1 land for 2 mana, especially in this deck. You're gonna have so much mana. So Riptide Laboratory, depends on, you know. So you pay 2, return target wizard you control to its owner's hand. I like to include this just because there's one other creature in here, right here. These 2 creatures you can bounce back. Gadwick, so that's card draw, recursion, and Prime Speaker Zagana. So you can throw her down when you have a weaker creature out, draw 4 cards or so, and then just bounce her back to your hand with Riptide Laboratory and do it again whenever you have a bigger creature, or do it again because you don't have a bigger creature. On top of all this card draw, again, would like to point out that Teferi will be growing a lot. It can get out of hand. It can get out of hand, and that's what makes this deck so fun to pilot. There's a lot of different routes you can go with that. And speaking of, that's why we're going to go ahead and roll over into our win cons, our combos, and our ramping. So first, we'll look at our win cons. Spice it back up. Okay. And so, our win cons, our main win cons, so this is like when we pull these out, we're expecting the game to end either on the same turn or at the very most to the next turn. So, looking at them all, here we are. Nyx Bloom Ancient, it could be a bomb, but it triples the amount of mana you get from a permanent. And if our commander is out, Kruphix, while we're tripling mana, if that just goes 1 cycle, and especially if we have an effect that lets us untap our lands, like we're gonna run away with the game. This, like when that happens, you have so much mana, we're gonna cast a really big X spell and run away with the game. So there's Nyx Bloom. The other one, a more combat-oriented focus of this deck is, because this deck can win at instant speed. Again, we have that sub 1/1 counter theme with all our Hydras and such. Creatures with 1/1 counters on them can't be blocked. Herald of Secret Streams, what a great card. Next is Kodama, the West Tree, modified creatures. So creatures with 1/1 counters have trample. This gives all our creatures trample. That's evasion. It's good. And this is added flavor because it's only 3 mana. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage, you get to search your library for a basic land. Put it on the battlefield tapped. So that's trample, 1/1 counters, and unblockable. Now we get into our instant speed, Drown in Dreams. If we have enough mana piled up, this kills a player, and this kills 2 players. You could just kill 1 player with a lower amount of mana by making them draw and then mill. But Drown in Dreams is definitely an instant speed player removal in my eyes. Unbound Flourishing, if you have this out, it's going to copy Drown in Dreams whenever you cast it, so you can remove an entire board. Yeah, it just gets out of Finale of Devastation. If you have enough mana, you pour this to go search out any of your creature bombs, which will run away with the game, or you could go grab either these 3 creatures right here to help you close out the game. If X is 10 or more, so if you're paying 12 or more, whatever, after you get that, all creatures you control get plus X and gain haste. So this could just close out games, especially if you have a wide board from something like Scoot Swarm. They'll all get plus 10 and gain haste. Or maybe you're playing it for like 40. I've done it. You play it for 40, so just so everything gets plus 40 and haste. Especially if they have 1/1 counters on them, so they're unblockable, and you just end the game with 3 creatures. On top of that, you know, Unbound Flourishing would copy it, so then it would be plus 80, 2 creatures out. Finale Revelation, that draw 10 cards earlier I was talking about. Well, you do that twice, as long as you have Unbound Flourishing out. Like, it's powerful. These are your win cons. This is your win con of the deck. Like, this is how you're gonna close it out 9 times out of 10. There are other ways. Getting back to it though, with all the X's, we might as well look at our combo here. Let me explain how this combo works and what it is. So, Isochron Scepter. This, again, you exile anything, any instant with CMC 2 or less from the game, and then you get to copy it and play it for 2. So we have this instant in here, Dramatic Reversal. Untap all non-land permanents you control. So the way that works, we cast an Isochron Scepter, and at any point we can pay 2 mana to cast a copy of Dramatic Reversal. We just have to pay 2 and tap Isochron Scepter, and then we get that ability. Okay? Well, this says untap all non-land permanents you control. So when we cast this and it resolves, it will untap Isochron Scepter. So you see how this works here. Let me break this down. Let's grab anything. We have bunch of rocks, bunch of effects in this deck to get this going. But we'll just start with one. You can do it with 3 creatures with Cryptolith Rideout, which makes them mana dorks, because all you need is 3 mana. So let's say we have 3 creatures. Never mind cast triggers and such. Say we have 3 creatures that can tap for 1 mana each. We'll tap each of them. Let's go ahead and pull this over here. So we'll tap for 1, 2, 3 mana. The color doesn't matter. They could tap in this situation for any color. The color doesn't matter right now. What matters is that it costs 2 to activate this, and we have the ability to create more than 2 mana. So we create more than 2 mana, which is 3. We spend 2 of it to activate Isochron Scepter, and so we have 1 left over. Isochron Scepter, because we activate it, casts Dramatic Reversal, which untaps all non-land permanents we control. So you just need a way to produce at least 3 or more mana outside of hands, and that's how this combo goes infinite. Infinite what? Infinite mana. And so because we just untapped everything, we've netted 1 mana So we just do it again. Tap for another 3. We're at 4. Spend 2 of it to activate Isochron. Copy Dramatic Reversal. Untap all non-land permanents. Now we have 2 mana. And see, once you explain that, you can say, okay, so I'm going to make 800 mana or whatever. And as long as you have your commander out, that mana doesn't go anywhere. So most times, though, if you do have this, you're saving this until you hit one of your win cons so you can win on the same turn. You don't want... One, you don't want to be that guy that puts your opponent say, "Oh, I have unlimited mana and I can't kill you," or and two, like it's a better play to wait until you have the win con that you can use with unlimited mana, just because that gives your opponents less time to respond. Like think about something like Chromatic Orrery. It taps for 5 mana. Okay, 5 mana. I'm gonna spend 2 of that Isochron, play Dramatic Reversal, untap them, and now I just netted 3 mana. Like, nah, it gets out of hand real quick. Look how many mana rocks we have. This is just mana rocks. Never mind our mana dorks and ramp and whatever have you. Like, this is just our mana rocks. All we need is like any 2 of these. Any 2 of these and we're fine. All we need is ability to produce more than 2 mana outside of your non-land permanents. And then you'll get, give me that back. and then your combo will be assembled. Not bad. Not bad at all. It's the easy cheesy way to do it. A lot of times I won't pull it out even if I have it in hand. It's just, this is one of those things I've learned long ago. Like, even if it's rude or nasty or whatever, like, we still run it because you never know when the opponent or the Charlie is going to be running it. And when they are, then you're prepared and you'll be glad that you did. Next, finally, last, we're going to look at our ramp package. The reason this deck performs so well, in my opinion, is because we have 23 draw spells and we have 17 ramp spells. So that's just a very nice combination that performs, in my opinion. So starting off, we have Birds of Paradise. Let me spread these real quick. Let's get our creatures. Just one. Got them. Okay. Birds of Paradise. We're looking at all of our rocks here. We got a bunch of little mana rocks. We got Isochron Scepter again because it can copy instants or sorceries. That shouldn't actually be in here. Not gonna lie. I don't know why that's there. Get out of here. What are you doing? Alright, so more mana rocks, Victory Chimes, Chromatic Orrery, Arcane Signet. We got the Allspark, Doubling Cube, whichever. We got Great Hinge. All of our artifacts from before. Lithoform Engine to copy any of these. Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, Growth Spiral, Rolling, Regrowth, Awaken the Woods, Scape Shift, and 3 visits. Amazing, amazing ramp package. Rampant Growth, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tapped. Only 2 mana, not bad. Nature's Lore, 2 mana, same thing. Search your library for a forest, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It doesn't come in tap, so it's actually not the same thing, but you get the gist. 3 visits for 2 mana, search your library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Nature's Lore, 3 visits. Growth Spiral. Draw a card. You may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield at instant speed. That's great. I really like ramp at instant speed because a lot of times it's sorcery. Because you see over here, we also have instant speed Rolling, Regrowth. Sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Scape Shift is also a great card. I use this card for land utility. Whenever you need to like go pick up a reliquary or a homeward path, if you have like a control-y player that's trying to steal stuff, this is a great way to do it. Or if I want to go tutor out like Field of the Dead and start creating a bunch of tokens on top of like, oh, it's about to be a long drawn out game, like, okay, sacrifice any number of lands, search your library for up to that many lands, put them on the battlefield. Generally, anytime I cast Scape Shift, I'm sacrificing at least 4 lands. But just be careful with what you sacrifice. Before, I have sacrificed like a homeward path. I know, right? And then somebody steals all my stuff. I was like, wow, that feels bad. Awaken the Woods. This is great because it creates X creatures, but they're also forests, so they're mana dorks. So, like, it kind of supports a go wide theme. You know, you get all these creatures start casting. You have that Defiler Vigor out. They're all getting much larger. Swing wide kind of thing. And there we have it, guys. That is the deck tech for our Kruphix God of Horizons. Now, what I'm going to do is run it through like a quick little 5-turn spin down on this. See how well the deck performs. We'll combine it all, shuffle them up, and then we'll go to close it out. Let's draw 7 cards and see how it does. This hand is keepable. Now, it's not the prettiest, but it's definitely keepable. So we start this off. Well, we pretend that we're at a multiplayer thing, so I'll draw for my turn. Oh, wow. Okay, this hand is great. we'll play a Misty Rainforest. We'll pass turn. At the end of our opponent's turn, we're going to tap sack Misty Rainforest, paying 1 life to search our library for any forest card. We are going to go for the Tanglet because it comes in tapped. That's the proper way to use fetches there, gents. And now we'll take our turn. Untap, upkeep, draw. We will play a Bark Channel Path. I think we want the state. Boom. We want the blue side. I want blue mana. And for 2 mana, I'm going to not do anything. I'm going to pass my turn. And then it will come back to me. We're on turn 3 now. On turn 3. Turn 3, we're going to drop an Urza Saga. I don't know why I didn't do that turn 2. I missed it. It's okay. And now for 3 mana, we're going to go ahead and play a Garruk, I believe is the play here. It can be bought. X11 counter. Okay, that's not bad at all. I think we go with Garruk's Uprising. Okay. Untap, upkeep, draw, turn 4. We're going to play a land. I really wish we could activate that to create that token, but that's fine. We're going to end up paying 2 for there. That's going to come in tapped. We'll probably drop that for 3. So we'll drop 1, 2. Nature's Lore. Go search for forest. I believe it comes in as wood, right? So we have 3. Forest card, put that onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So we'll put Breeding Pool out. Sure, we'll shock it. We'll tap 1, 2, 3 for a Kadama of the West Tree, and then we'll pass. Get some creatures out there because we are on turn 4 or 5 right now. Okay, next turn we're looking to cast our commander and go for the win. That's what's happening here. So we're gonna play this Field of the Dead. It comes in tap. This is a good card because we're at that point where it's about to start triggering. When it or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 7 or more lands, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So we're almost at that point. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different lands with different names. So next turn, any land we play, and we have it in hand, we will start creating tokens, which is always great. We're gonna tap all 5 here, and we're gonna cast our command. What? Hold on, didn't see this. Okay, so this card, this is the 3rd turn. That would have to go. Let's flip this over. Let's look for our Soul Ring. Search. There she blows. Shuffle it up. Put that in hand. So the way we'll do this is we'll tap 1 for Soul Ring. We'll tap 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mana to play our commander. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's not enough devotion to become a thing. He is. Whenever creature power 4 or greater enters, we did not enter. Okay. Wait. I don't know if that triggers. I'm pretty sure it does because it's an enchantment creature. Anyway, whichever. We pass turn. It comes back to us. We untap. We upkeep. We draw. We win. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? We win now. We win the game. Because then we play a homeward path. And now we create our little token. Our little 2/2 zombie token. Our commander's letting us pile up mana. So now we just sit back. This is where I guess some would call it sandbagging. We sit back, we let the opponent do whatever they're gonna do. We pass a turn. And at the end of their turn, we're gonna float all of our mana. This is how you play it. 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, 8 mana. Where is that mana counter? Give me that. So now I have 8 mana on my commander. And then my turn, I untap with all that mana. I'm going to go to not in the game, but set up to in the game. I have options. I can wipe the board with Curse of the Swine because I can, and still have about 5 mana to do whichever I wish with. I can play a huge Hydra. I got 1 piece of a combo to get infinite mana. I have a potential removal spell right here. I'm only holding on to this spell in case I get a Defiler of Vigor so I can get the green spell trigger. I probably, if I were in an actual game, I would probably place down the Hungering Hydra. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just because I wouldn't be able to make use of Benevolent Hydra. Well, I guess so. I guess I would. So yeah, we'll do Benevolent Hydra. We'll tap for 2 green. Here's 1 green, 2 green, and then we'll cast Benevolent Hydra for 8. So it comes in with 8 1/1 counters on it. 1, 2. Well, there's no real reason to hold on to all this mana, huh? So we'll do it for 9. 1 more. So that way we can spend 2 to make Thespian Stage Copy Breeding Pool. So that way we can have more colored mana, because right now we do have to match up our mana. 9. Oh wait, here's 2 more. 10, 11. Boom. So now we just casually casted an 11 drop Hydra. And it has trample because of Kadama. And because it was over 4 power, we get to draw. It also has trample because of Grooks. Then we hit another land. I think we already played our land this turn. No, we did not. So we'll hit our land drop. It enters tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. It's a great land. It's a great land. We'll assume that one of them died. Okay. Because that's great magic. Okay. And now it is our turn again. Untap, upkeep, and then draw. And here we go. Here's where we run away with the game. So 2 green, 2 blue. I don't know if I have enough for you. So here's 1 blue, 2 blue, 1 green, 2 green. And then 1, oh, nope, 1, 2. We'll cast Prime Speaker Zagana. She will enter the battlefield with 12 1/1 counters. And then we will draw a card from Garruk's Uprising. And then we would draw 13 cards from her ability. When she enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to her power. 13 cards, gents. 13 cards. Now, if you think you can't win the game from here, I don't know what to tell you, homies. So I'm going to tap 3 and get the pain train on the way. If only I had more juicy lands did landfall me. So I'll put out a Scoot Swarm. Check this out. Tap 3 for a Scoot Swarm, and then I will pass my turn. And so on your next turn, you'd untap with all that mana. You just scape shift with Scoot Swarm out, and then you'd create a butt ton. A butt ton. I would just untap first. I'd play land to get the trigger. I'd play a Nyx Bloom, tap everything for all the mana I can, and then scape shift to get all the triggers I can. It just gets out of hand, and then you just look at your opponent and say GG's. That's like turn 8. That's mid to late big mana stompy right there.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.